Okay. Okay, so we are in the month of Tammuz, and we're going to start learning with the Hayom Yom. And today was the 7th day of Tammuz, and it's going to be night very soon. And then it's going to be the 8th day of Tammuz. So I'd like to start with that because it actually, the Hayom Yom from Tammuz 8 quotes a quote from Mendel Kessen in a lecture that he just gave, that somebody very nicely writes up all of his lectures, and then you can read them. So it's kind of a nice way to follow the lecture. So Karina, you kind of off center, so I don't see your face, even though, yeah, that's better. So it says, we find that Hashem's love for our father Abraham was mainly because, and then quote, he will command Yitzaveh, his children and his household, end of quote. Yitzaveh here connotes bring into a communion with Hashem. All of Avram's towering avoda in the test to which he was subjected cannot be compared to his commanding others and bringing them into communion, in other words, to his bringing merit to others. So, first of all, what do you think that means, what I just read? Do you have an idea of what it is that what it means? I'll just say it again. Avram's merit, or what Hashem, in a way, it actually says his love was mainly because, and then it quotes from the Chumash, and it says, he will command his children and his household really to walk in the ways of Hashem, to follow the commandments. That's what will cause Hashem to, it actually says here, love Avram the most, because he's teaching and imbuing his children with this connection to Hashem. And then the Hayom Yom says all of his accomplishments, everything that he did, all the 10 trials that he passed, don't compare to the value and the worth of bringing other people into connection with Hashem. So the reason why Mendel Kessen was commenting on this verse, that Abraham we say it in Shema also, the idea of teaching your children, you should teach your children, that Abraham did this. So Mendel Kessen was talking about the new government in Israel, and he was saying that a lot of the religious parties have lost their place in the government. They're now in the opposition. And according to him, he felt that it was because the religious members of the old government didn't oppose a lot of public schools adopting a very almost reform agenda in their public school chinuch. And then he quoted this pasuk, and he said the whole point of us as Jews is that we should be able to teach our children and keep them kind of connected in with the tradition. And the fact that they didn't do that, he feels that's why they lost their right to be in the government, and now they've been pushed to the side in the opposition. So stressing that Hashem takes great pleasure in when we try to reach out to other Jews and try to share the inspiration or the knowledge of Torah. And then that's for tonight. And just for tomorrow, there's a quick little one that is very nice. And it basically is the greatest guaranteed assurance of divine assistance for all Jewish parents in need of special help and deliverance for their children is supporting others who study Torah. So that's like a nice little hint of how you can make sure that you're getting a steady supply of assistance and help. And then the last one, which I think is a very deep idea, and if one can live with it, it can truly transform your life, is based, it says, in the early years of his leadership, the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, lived and taught in the 1700s. The footsteps of a man are directed by Hashem. When a Jew comes to a particular place, it is for an inner divine intent and purpose. And what's that purpose? To perform a mitzvah, whether a mitzvah between man and Hashem or a mitzvah between man and his fellow man. So no place that you arrive at is an accident. Every place that you arrive at, you were sort of directed there by Hashem. And the reason why you were directed there is to do a mitzvah, whether it's between man and man, a man and God mitzvah, or between man and a fellow man. And then he continues, a Jew is God's messenger. Wherever a messenger, a shaliach may be, he represents the power of the mashalech, the one who sent him. So the superior quality that souls possess higher than the angels, who are also messengers, is that the souls are messengers by virtue of Torah. So everywhere a person finds himself, whether you thought about it and you executed your own choice, or you landed up in some place by accident, you were meant to be in that place to either perform a mitzvah between you and God, or to perform a mitzvah between you and another person, and that you Hashem's messenger, and you were sent there really representing Hashem. And compared to an angel, you're even a higher messenger, because an angel maybe was sent as well to wherever, not maybe, an angel is sent to wherever that angel goes, but the angel doesn't have the merit of Torah as well. So human beings are superior than angels. Wherever we happen to find ourselves, in whatever situation, we are Hashem's messenger and have arrived at that place because of an inner divine intent and purpose. So I thought that's kind of an inspiring thing. If anyone wants to comment about that, I mean, if you live like that all the time, you could feel like you can't just relax anytime. There's a joke about a Chabadnik on a plane, and he gets on the plane and somebody religious sits down next to him and he's like, shoo, now I can relax because I don't have to work and trying to connect you. You're connected already. But what do you think of that before we go on to the Parsha part? I mean, I said it in a few different ways, that we have this achrayus, this responsibility to, once we connected to Torah, that we're not shoving it down other people's throats. We're not trying to pressure or coerce anyone. But if we have in mind that Mashiach is coming and we want people to get connected, then in fact we're doing them a favor, allowing them to plug in. They have a cell phone and maybe their cell phone is running out, battery is getting low, and you say, come, I have a charger. You can plug in your cell phone and you can charge. So you're not being coercive, you're not being bossy, you're not doing something, you're doing something that's really helpful for the other person. So just any comments on that before we go on? Because that's pretty strong advice, as well as Hashem saying, as well as it being that Hashem loved Avraham Avinu more for, bringing other people to Torah than any accomplishment of his 10 trials. That's quite a significant, endorsement of that particular activity. Okay, so if you want to comment, you can send a message. Or, sorry, you have a comment?
Just a small comment. Sure. I'm very careful. I try to be very careful about in front of non-Jews. It's an indirect way of doing things, but about Kiddush Hashem, because it's very important, especially when you live in an area where there's so many Jews, and who knows what these non-Jews around here think. I think it's such an important thing that when you're in the store, when you're in places, to like make an effort to just be more of a Jew and make a Kiddush Hashem. It's an indirect way of doing it, but
Yeah, I think that's very powerful and very important. That's making Hashem's name, shine in the world. That's a huge thing. So thank you for that.
that's our job, like
Yes,
you said.
yes. Okay, so
Uh-oh.
coming into Parshas Chukat. So Chukas is talking about the laws that Hashem has given us, or at least it starts with the laws that Hashem has given us. In particular, the Chok, this is the decree, V'yedaber Hashem el Moshe el Aaron lemor, Zot Chukat HaTorah. This is a Chukat. This is a mitzvah that doesn't have a decree, that doesn't really have a rational explanation, and it's the whole story of the red heifer, that if a person is impure, they should go to the Kohen, and the Kohen does a process with them whereby they take ashes from a red cow that was completely red, mix it, do a process with hyssop and blood and dipping and whatever, crimson thread, cedar wood, and then the chok is that the person who was impure, who came into contact with the dead person, after doing this procedure, that person becomes pure, and the Kohen who facilitated his becoming pure, the Kohen becomes impure, and then the Kohen has to find a way to become pure himself. So he has to then immerse and go to the mikveh and do his own process of becoming pure. So just to briefly stay on that topic just for a short amount of time, how did the person become impure in the first place? He had contact with the dead person. So it's a klal gadol, all-encompassing priority of a Torah viewpoint, that life is utterly holy, and the most holy thing in all times is the opportunity for life and the opportunity to generate life and to create life. So this is the understanding of the whole topic of nida, that if a woman had the opportunity to create life and then that life didn't get actually created, and then she has her period, she's attached to that element of potential for life that didn't kind of find its potential, it didn't become, the beginning of a birth. So there's tuma, as in the tuma of her being nida. When we're sleeping, it says 1/60 of our soul goes up to Shemayim, and so when we wake up in the morning, we've had 1/60 of our being connected to this impurity, impureness, death aspect. So we have to wash our hands when we wake up. So we don't have this concept that, a person gets in a terrible accident, or a person loses faculties of their arms or their legs or something, and then, poor old person, their life isn't worth living. They ask for, mercy, euthanasia or something disgusting. I think I remember telling you the story last year, Karina, about that horrible book that I read where there was this young man, and he was a big sports person and a jet setter, and he had an accident, and he felt so sorry for himself that he didn't have the use of his limbs, that he felt like, his life wasn't worth living. And then the love story was that even the woman who was hired to help him helps, to terminate his life, and the music's playing and a Hollywood story, and we feel so bad for him, and she helps him get his wishes, and, because his life wasn't worth living. And I found that story so infuriating, because from a Jewish point of view, life, no matter how compromised the person might be, life is so utterly valuable, and no one can evaluate the power of a mitzvah that a person can do, even if they have many other faculties that are deficient. The example that I think is so incredibly inspiring, and I get inspired every Shabbos, is the story of Yitzi Horowitz, who's a shaliach of the Rebbe of Chabad, or Lubavitcher Chabad shaliach, in California, and he has ALS, which has been quite advanced at this point. So he doesn't have movement of his body. He has a trach, so he has he's breathing through his neck, can't speak. And the only way that he's able to communicate is he uses his eyes, and he can kind of activate letters just with his eyes. And otherwise, he really is completely paralyzed. This man, Yitzi Horowitz, writes with his eyes every week a Devat Torah that takes him maybe the whole week to write. It's the most profound Devat Torah that I read. I look forward to reading it every week. It's in the L'chaim magazine that gets distributed into all the Chabad shuls. You come to the shul and you find it lying on the table. He always says the most profound and amazing things, and he's writing it with his eyes. That's the only thing he has available for him, and it comes out on some computer that he can write that way. And he's influencing hundreds and hundreds of people just with the movement of his eyes. So the paraduma, the person is impure because they were exposed to a dead person, and so they have the status of impure. They need to redeem themselves, become pure through not redeem themselves, but achieve purity from the state with the ashes of the red cow. So I'm not going to say so much more about that. The next thing that we have in this week's Parsha is the story about Miriam and her death, and the whole connection with the water story, that when Miriam dies, the water that was in her merit is no longer available. So first of all, it just says the people died and she was buried. There's no story that the people mourned for Miriam. We don't hear about them crying. We don't hear about anybody looking for a burial place for her. Just Miriam died there and she was buried there. And it seems like somehow, Hashem didn't like it that there was that the Torah doesn't record that the assembly wept for her as they did after Moshe. Indeed, they didn't even shed any tears over the loss of Miriam, who was the source of their water. It was in her merit that they had water. So, according to the Al-Sheikh, if it was in her merit, the fact that it was in her merit didn't seem to matter to them. And Hashem then, they don't appreciate that the water came in Miriam's merit, so they lost the water until they became aware that somehow it was in her merit. It's an interesting idea that this water came in Miriam's merit, like how? So we know that when Moshe was a small baby, Yocheved and Miriam, well, really Miriam organized that, or suggested to her mother Yocheved that the little baby should be put in a basket. And Miriam was the one who watched Moshe at the Nile while he was there. And there was another attachment between Miriam and the water. I don't see where I read it. So let me see if I can find it. Um, 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 okay, I don't see. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Miriam has this merit. It's Miriam has this merit that the water is in her schus. When she passes away, there's no mourning for her, no acknowledgement really of her, and the water is no longer available to them. So then we have this whole story of the hitting of the rock. Hashem wanted Hashem, first of all, right after it says that there was no water for the assembly, they gathered against Moshe and Aaron, and the people quarreled with Moshe and started to say again their typical moan, if only we had perished as our brethren perished before Hashem. Why have you brought the congregation to Hashem, to this wilderness, to die there, we and our animals? Why did you have us come out from Egypt to bring us to this place? A lot of moaning and groaning. There's no seeds, there's no figs, no grapes, no pomegranates, and no water to drink. So the difference between their complaint and complaints before them is that, in fact, that what they said is right. They didn't have water at this point. At other times, they were complaining that they didn't have food, but they really had the manna. They wanted meat, then they got the meat. But here they have a legitimate reason for complaint. But it's interesting that the water doesn't only symbolize actual water. The water is symbolizing of wisdom, Torah insight, and connection. And somehow, even though Moshe Rabbeinu was still present, Miriam, as the female mashpia in a way of the nation, when she passes away, there's some kind of breakdown in the way the people are able to receive the teachings, because the Torah teachings are compared to water, and they begin quarreling. So they quarrel with Aaron, they quarrel with Moshe, they're quarreling because they don't have water, but also because somehow her presence of helping them absorb these teachings is not there. And then the Meforshim tell us some interesting things. I've explained before in previous teachings that there's a tradition that the water came from a rock, and a rock that sort of followed the Yidden in the desert through their travels, following after them, rolling with water contained within it. So it says when in the pasuk it's talking about the rock, it says ha-selah, a specific selah, not just any selah. And here the word selah is for a rock. Other times, I guess the word sur is used, but here it's selah. And it doesn't just say selah, it says ha-selah, the rock. So it's a specific rock. It's a rock that the Bnei Israel kind of know about. And it says that Chazal teach us that Hashem had created a rock that he used often as a source for miraculous waters. This was the same rock that the Malach revealed to Hagar when her son Ishmael was dying of thirst. So that's an interesting idea, that Hagar was thirsty and the Malach says, look behind you, open your eyes, there's a rock. I don't remember there being a rock. I remember I thought of it as a well, but maybe it was the same kind of well as Miriam's well, which really wasn't a well, it's actually a rock. So it's the same rock that the Malach reveals to Hagar when her son Ishmael was dying of thirst. And it's the same rock that Moshe was commanded to draw water from 40 years earlier when they first came out of Mitzrayim. And at that point, Moshe Rabbeinu did in fact hit the rock. And it's the same rock that's rolling with them all the way on their journeys. And according to some opinions, this rock was a sieve, like it had some kind of sieve quality. So let me just see, I was trying to find you something and I was looking in the one place, but now I realize it's in the other place. So let me just see. Yeah. So it's described, yeah. Okay. So it's the same rock that accompanies the people throughout their wandering. And when she was alive, the water gave forth, the rock gave forth the water, but now that she's no longer alive, the rock kind of holds its water back. And then there's the whole story of Moshe Rabbeinu. Then the people are complaining, they're fighting, they're upset, they're arguing, and they need water. So Hashem speaks to Moshe and he says, take the staff and gather together assembly, you and your Aaron, your brother, and speak to the rock before their eyes that it shall give water. And you shall bring forth from them, for them, water from the rock and give them to drink. So we know that it's a famous story. Moshe wasn't quite sure. Suddenly the rock, according to some opinion, he didn't know quite which rock it was. Maybe the rock got somehow lost with the other rocks and he wasn't quite sure which one it was. And instead of speaking, or he tried to speak, so let's see. Listen, and he speaks and he gets a little angry, he calls the Yidden, oh, rebels. And then he says, shall we bring forth water for you from this rock? And using that lashon, that language, shall we, instead of saying Hashem will bring, he says, shall we bring water for you? V'yomer lahim, shim'u na hamorim haman hasele hazeh. And he's punished for that. And then he raises his arm and he strikes the rock with his staff. One time and a little bit of water comes out, and then another time and an abundance of water comes out. So wasn't supposed to do that and gets punished for it. So it seems like a very strong punishment. And how come, and both he and Aaron aren't led into Eretz Israel because of this. And it seems like a strong punishment. Hashem wanted Moshe to speak to the rock, and in his speaking to the rock, the people would have been inspired with a greater amount of emunah that such a miracle could take place. I think it must have been a compelling miracle, even with him hitting the rock. But this incident gave gave Hashem an opportunity to punish Moshe and Aaron, who both really had punishments owing to them from previous circumstances. So Karina, just move your screen a tiny bit, because I see your arm and your shoulder, but not you. So I know you're there, but I'm not really seeing. Yeah, that's better. So Aaron participated in the sin of the golden calf, and he didn't really get a punishment. Hashem was kind of maybe holding his circumstances. And Moshe sent the spies that came back with this bad report. And now Hashem, because of both of those situations, the Yidden got a severe punishments. And now Moshe and Aaron could have, up until now, they would have been able to enter into the land, but without their community, really, because for these different reasons, the community would not be permitted to go in because of the spies, because of other reasons that the rest of the community forfeited their rights so to go into Eretz Israel. So Moshe and Aaron now in a way, because of this incident, Hashem says, okay, I'm going to punish them. They're going to get that punishment from that, in a way that before they could have gotten, but that they didn't get. So according to Rashi, that rock somehow mysteriously disappeared. And so, you know, it's an interesting thing. What Moshe is punished with mostly, really, is that he had an opportunity. The opportunity was to cultivate, to use this as a learning story, to cultivate faith in the people, in Hashem's capabilities. Now, we would think that the people's faith would have had many opportunities to be cultivated. These are people who saw the 10 plagues in Mitzrayim. These are people who saw the Red Sea splitting. These are people who saw a lot of things. You could say about us, we the people who saw the missiles, 4,000 missiles coming from the Hamas, and, you know, very few Yidden were killed, Baruch Hashem. Even one is too many, but 4,000 missiles. So maybe when you see miracles up close, you don't really call them miracles. But the Chachamim give a lot of explanations of what they think the exact aspect of Moshe's sin was, that they're all trying to, you know, trying to understand what is it exactly that Moshe did wrong. So Rashi says, instead of speaking to the rock, he hit it. Rambam says that he got angry. The reason why he got punished, according to the Rambam, is that he got angry, calling them rebels. And then, because he was angry, he made the people feel that Hashem was angry with them. And Rambam says, we don't see that Hashem is angry with them. So when Moshe gets angry, his sin is that now the people could think Hashem's love for them is conditional, or, you know, they're thirsty, they don't have water, they want water. Why should Hashem be angry with them? So the Rambam says that's why he gets this severe punishment. The Reb Hananiel says it's because he said, we're going to bring forth water, and didn't put it on Hashem. And the Barbanel tells us that that there was an underlining cause, and this was the idea that this was held off punishments from before, the golden calf and the meraglim, and now this is an opportunity to bring forth this way. And the Chidushay Harim finds the key to the shortcoming of Moshe and Aaron in the word le'anehim, before their eyes, implying that Moshe had to speak to the rock in such a way that the people would see something rather than merely know it. In other words, the people would have an opportunity to really see with their eyes, just from Moshe speaking, that the rock would, you know, start bringing forth water. Just like at the revelation at Har Sinai, we learn that the nation saw what is normally only heard, meaning that the understanding of that experience went beyond the normal limitations of human physicality. So when you see what's normally heard and hear what's normally seen, you're having a three-dimensional experience, which is like a holographic experience, which is Hashem really revealing and coming out of his hiddenness in a completely different way. And that's what Hashem wanted this experience to be here again. And then they could maybe rise to new heights. So they got their water, but they didn't have this three-dimensional kind of transformative experience. So I think this might be Shoshana, because it's
Hi, Broccoli.
hi, it is Shoshana. So welcome. So basically, we've outlined a lot of the commentators' explanations of why Moshe and Aaron were punished at this point by Moshe hitting off the rock not once but twice instead of speaking to the rock. Basically, the compelling arguments from the rabbis are that Moshe had an opportunity to show once again how Hashem can operate in this transcendental, higher than nature way. And just like at Har Sinai, that the people's experience of revelation was so all encompassing that this opportunity that Moshe had to speak to the rock and for water to just come from it by his speaking to it was an opportunity that got lost. So I just want to share something that I was learning this week. There's a sefer called Duties of the Heart, which I'm sure Suri knows well. Holvavos Levavos. Holvavos. I'm not pronouncing it right. Duties of the Heart. And it's Ibn Ben Pakuda who writes it. And one of the tractates, one of the gates is on bitachon, imun and bitachon, belief in Hashem. And basically, we're supposed to have a belief in Hashem, that Hashem can do anything, that everything that we need is in Hashem's world. It's all there in the world available to us. And when we need it, if we have sufficient trust in Hashem, we can somehow access whatever it is that we need. That's what it means to have trust in Hashem. And in this Duties of the Heart on Imun and Bitachon, it speaks about the fact that an alchemist, apparently he wrote in the time of the alchemist, an alchemist could take silver and turn it into gold, or take gold and turn it into something else. I think it was silver into gold, or gold into silver, and silver into copper, copper into silver. But a person that has trust in Hashem can not even start with the substance at all. Maybe and this is sourced from the idea that man does not live on bread alone, which is really when it talks about the man, that even if you don't have the copper or the silver or the gold, that if you need something, Hashem will find a way to bring it to you. That is our trust in Hashem, that he is the source of our needs and he can bring us what it is that we need. So in Duties of the Heart, the author brings the example of Eliyahu Hanavi, who was hiding from, he was hiding at a certain point in his journey. A couple times he had to hide, he got unpopular. And it says the ravens brought him meat. Hashem got ravens to bring him meat to his cave. Where did they get the meat? They got the meat actually from the king Achav's table, and Achav is the king who was pursuing him. So that was kind of fun divine justice, that the ravens took meat and brought him meat. So he had a way of feeding Eliyahu even when he was hiding in a remote place. And he brings a few other examples. I can't remember them all right now, but that Hashem will provide whatever it is that you need if you have trust and faith, or you can have trust and faith that Hashem will provide. So this incident, and because of it, Moshe doesn't go into the promised land, nor Aaron, was because of them not taking this opportunity to cultivate this awesome level of trust and faith in Hashem that the water could come gushing just from Moshe speaking to it. Just before I finish, and then we'll open to conversation, and I did say for bringing, we have an interesting thing in this week's Parsha that the people are complaining again, and it is astounding how many times they complain. And they complaining now that they talking about the man, and they call it insubstantial food, the man, and they're very upset about it. And they, in the English, it says our soul is disgusted with this insubstantial food. So I'm
laughing at what you said, because you said that they're complaining yet again. So that's hilarious. But I wanted to show you. I don't think I could show you, but I have a water bottle in my hand. It's very interesting, but I can't figure out how to show you because of my screen. But the bottom of it, I mean, it comes in, come out.
Right.
Called manna, MANNA.
Right. That's cool. That is cool.
Like, you can't make that up. It literally, it's called manna. So.
Right. So, so they call the manna lechem haklokel, like it's insubstantial in some way. Anyway, the people, like I said, the people are complaining again. This time Hashem brings fiery serpents to bite the people, and a lot of people died. But if you were bitten and you looked, Moshe made a serpent. He fashioned a serpent out of copper and put it at the top of a pole. And the word for copper is nachoshech, which has the word nachash in it, which is a snake. He made this pole and made the snake and put it at the top of the pole. And so the Meforshim say, did people live just because they looked up at the top of the pole? No. When they looked up at the snake at the top of the pole, they were raising their eyes to Hashem, and in that way, they got healed. Hashem could have healed them without the serpent, but then they would have thought they were cured through natural means. So Hashem wanted them to know that just by looking upwards, they got cured. It's kind of interesting in a way. I think of this, it's not really an example of homeopathy because it wasn't real snake venom. It was just an image of a snake that cured the illness from being bitten by a snake. But it is an aspect of like healing like, but it's not really snake. It's just an image of a snake. But anyway, so that's what I have, and we can talk or converse or verbring or share or do anything for the rest of the time, because in sharing we grow and learn and understand. This idea of the rock, I'll just say one more thing. There's a beautiful quote about Miriam's rock, Miriam's well, and it's said in the name of the Arizal. I wanted to read this to you at the end. There's another song in this week's Parsha. Oh, I didn't tell you about the mountains that move, and kind of, it's a pretty dramatic story, but there once was a man with the skin disease who went down to immerse himself in the Sea of Tiberias, which is the Kinneret, and the well of Miriam appeared to him and he was healed. Where can that be found? Because we know that when the Yidden entered into Eretz Israel, this rock rolled into the Kinneret. Where can it be found? Rabbi Chia Bar Abba said, and it looks on the face of the Yeshimon, the wilderness. For anyone who goes up to the mountains, Yeshimon, he will see something like a small sieve in the Sea of Tiberias, and that is the well of Miriam. And then the Rabbi Chaim Vital, the main disciple of Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, gives an even more exact location. He says, and if you write this down and remember it the next time you're in Tiberias, as you walk along the shore of the Kinneret towards the hot springs of Tiberia, at the exact midway point in a place where there are many palm trees on the seashore, parallel to the tower that is atop the mountain, that's where you'll find the well of Miriam. And I've told this story many times, that it says that the Rabbi Chaim Vital became enlightened, or finally could understand the teachings of his teacher, the Arizal, when the Arizal took him on a boat ride on the Kinneret and told him to take his cup on the side of the boat and drink. And he said, this is the point or place where Miriam's well is. And after drinking from that particular person, a particular place in the water, Chaim Vital's comprehension of all of his Rebbe's teachings expanded exponentially. So, commentaries, quips, and commentaries. Quips, quotes, comments, and commentaries.
I feel like maybe I need to go to this lake of water, because then I will know the difference between a resh and a dalid, because I can't figure it out for the life of me. They look exactly alike. So I think it's very important. I can't.
It's the little thing at the back. Resh is just bends, and dalid has a little N before it bends.
Every time I come across it, I stumble.
I've got a hint for you. Dalid, door.
Yeah.
So the corner it's like a door. You don't have a rounded door, right? You have a corner.
Okay.
So the door has a corner. So every time you see the corner, it's a dalid. If you don't see the corner, like the hard stop, and it just kind of bends, that's an arch.
I like that, arch. Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe that'll help. Maybe I don't need to drink from the water.
Yeah, maybe that was the whole point of the shir, so you could get arch
out of that whole thing. That's what I needed. Yes.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Miriam was a incredible presence. She inspired the woman. She sang the song. She, kept the dream of Mashiach alive for the Yidden when they were in Mitzrayim. She was the one that inspired them to bring tambourines when they left so they could sing their song. She's a very inspirational personality. And, it wasn't nice that they didn't wait for her. I mean, that they didn't kind of make a fuss of her passing away. They just, she died, she got buried, and there was some consequence of that, losing the water, making them realize that, she had great value to them. But she definitely was underappreciated.
God.
So we should remember her and give her due honor. This as she passes away in this week's parsha.
When does this always happen?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Also, Aaron passes away in this week's parsha too. In fact, I think he's gathered up to his people, but that happens at the end of the parsha.
Bracha.
Yes.
I lost my picture, but so I don't understand. So after they lose the rock, what do they use for water after that? Maybe you said it, but I missed it because I'm working.
Well, Moshe found the rock. He didn't know which one it was right away, and he hit it, and then water came out, and then he hit it again, and then water gushed out. The first time he hit it, just a little bit came out, but then he did find it, even though it was sort of temporarily hidden from him. When he hit it and a little water came out, he hit it again, then that was the rediscovery of the rock.
Oh,
so they
okay,
did,
thank you.
yes, they did. And yeah, there's a very intense story when they're going through some valley, and there were enemies on each side of the valley, and then the Yidden were going to walk right through the valley and be ambushed, and Hashem brought the two mountains of each side of the valley together. It's a pretty gory story. also happens in this parsha, that the enemies were kind of defeated and the Yidden were able to pass through and be okay, as opposed to being ambushed. So I'm just seeing about Aaron's passing away, because I told you that he passes away in this week's parsha, so I hope it's true. Otherwise, I'll have to say, no, it didn't really happen. Yes, so it happens in this week's parsha. In the midst of all their journeying, Aaron shall be gathered to his people. He shouldn't enter the land that I've given him because he didn't listen to me with this business about the rock. Take Aaron and Eleazar, his son, and bring them up to Mount Hor. Strip Aaron of his clothing and dress Eleazar, his son, in them, and Aaron should be gathered in and die there. And Moshe did as Hashem commanded, and they went together up to Mount Hor before the eyes of the whole assembly. It's a very, very interesting way that death occurred. Aaron was well enough to walk with his son up the mountain. It wasn't a story of illness. Moshe, I guess together with Moshe takes off his clothing and dresses Eleazar, and then Aaron gives up his soul. And Moshe and Eleazar come down, and then the people saw that he had perished, and they wept for him for 30 days, the entire house of Israel, which is a lot more than Miriam got. So anyway, so I'm waiting for more comments or questions, and if there aren't any, then we will bring this to a close. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And next week there won't be a class because it's it'll be the retreat, our retreat, and it'll be too crazy, and I won't have Wi-Fi there. So I wish everybody an interesting Parshas Balak. It should be, Parshas Balak is all about the power of words and how important it is, the things we say, and blessings and curses. So we should all be blessed. And next weekend, have a good Shabbos.
Thank you, Bracha. Have a good
Have
time.
a very
Have a
good
good retreat.
retreat.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, have a good
much.
retreat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.